Hey, what's going on everyone? In this review, we'll be looking at one of the most anticipated Gunpla ever, the Master Grade Gundam Alex, version 2.0. Now, I've waited for this Master Grade for years, so while I'm pretty positive it's going to be better than the 1.0 from like 1999, I'm still curious if this kit can live up to the hype. So, as always, we'll be reviewing this Master Grade Gundam in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and the gimmicks. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this review can help you decide if this 2.0 is worth the wait. Alright, now let's jump right into this build. In my mind, version 2.0 kits have always been the peak of what Bandai has been able to do at any given point. Going all the way back to the Gundam Mark II, version 2.0, each one has really strived for thought-out engineering, detailed inner frames, and tons of moving pieces. That's why I'm really surprised by how basic this Alex version 2.0 is. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I saw molded-in pistons on a Master Grade. Really, outside of the collapsing piece on the back of the leg, the hinges in the chest, and the Gatling gun gimmick, there's really nothing that innovative going on here. Maybe it's to keep costs down and still include the full armor set, but the engineering here is really straightforward. On the bright side though, Bandai decided to make up for it by throwing in as many frills as possible. And oh, are there frills? Starting with the inner frame, you'll notice there are actually 2 different colors of plastic here. See, the Alex's inner frame is supposed to be this light bluish gray color. However, Bandai wanted the inner frame to poke through in a few vents, and this light gray color would have been way too bright. So instead, whenever inner frame pokes through, you get this dark metallic black color. It's a really simple idea, and it helps this kit stay way more anime accurate. Next we have these Gatling guns that come in a plated silver. It's the same kind of plated coating used in the Hyakushiki version 2.0, so it's dull enough to show details and shadows, but still bright enough to catch your eye. I'm a really big fan. The shoulder joints on this kit are covered by a scrunched up piece of plastic. It looks pretty cool, but it's kind of a hassle to get inside of the shoulder armor. You can also apply a little too much pressure to the upper arm connection, causing it to disconnect every now and again. Honestly, I think I kinda prefer the rubber tubing used in both the 1.0 and the Master Grade Ingrams. Lastly, on the inner frame, and probably most importantly, all these white and yellow vents are actual molded pieces. Each and every one. It's just amazing. While building this, I was having flashbacks to the version 1.0, where the front of these shoulders were just a single white piece. It was a nightmare. This 2.0, however, has everything separated and molded in its correct color. The difference is really night and day. You also get a single extra vent, just in case you lose one, which is always appreciated. Alright, now let's move on to this outer armor. Being a newer kit, there's of course no need for glue, no screws, and only a few bad nubs here or there on this blue. It's pretty solid stuff all around. My only real complaint here is that some of the panel lines can be a little bit shallow. The legs, for instance, have these large yellow thrusters with tons of details inside that you're going to want to throw some ink at. However, there's no real channel here, so most ink will probably fade up within a week or so. Same goes for these circles on the forearms and these dashes on the shield and backpack. With this being a 2019 Master Grade, there's really no mandatory painting here. However, this is a model kit, so there's always a few touch-ups you can do. Here's a few I did using just a Gundam marker. First and foremost, you can skip the panel lining pin and just use black paint for all these circular vents. It's super easy to do and looks way more consistent than ink. Next, I added a ton of black around these vents. I just really wanted to shoot for that anime-esque pure black look, you know? However, the side vents on the shoulder specifically used that lighter gray inner frame instead for some reason, so I say throwing some black on them is almost required. Also, the front vents on the shoulders for some reason have white molded around the vent. But hey, it's a real quick paint job since again, this circular vent is a separate piece. I also highly recommend painting the section on the waist skirt. It comes as part of the yellow vent insert, but with just a quick coat of black paint, you can blend it in pretty well. Next, Bandai actually molded the cameras and eyes in a clear green, so it's super easy to forego the provided sticker by just painting black around the eyes. I will say this green is a little dark though, so part of me is wondering if I should go for the sticker anyway. After that, there's some more black painting you can do around the lip of the Gatling gun, just to shoot for more anime accuracy. I also used black for this middle section on the waist. It comes as that dark gray inner frame, but again I really wanted a deep black like in the anime, so I decided to paint it. Alright, I think that about does it for the build. Honestly, the engineering wasn't as in-depth as I'd expect of a modern 2.0 kit. I mean, motodim pistons on the legs? What year is this? Still, there are just so many frills on here, so we'll have to give this build an above average 4 out of 5. Beginners don't have much to worry about here either. Just make sure you get a black Gundam marker and you'll be just fine. Now for my favorite part of a 2.0 kit, the appearance. Like seemingly all 2.0 kits, this Master Grade is going for an anime accurate look, and it just pulls it off with flying colors. I don't even know where to start here. I mean, the most obvious trait is probably its bulky proportions. Modern Master Grades like the GM Sniper 2 tend to be very slimmed up to facilitate better articulation. This kit, however, doesn't care about that at all. It's going for that late 80s anime look, and it just nails it. The chest is really blocky here, but still has enough curves to be interesting. The arms and legs are a little on the thin side, but then they flare out with these blue machine gun covers and leg thrusters. And the feet here are just the right size. Comparing this to the 1.0, it really isn't even a contest. I specifically really like the head sculpt here. It goes for a more round look, if that makes any sense. It's sleek enough to be modern, but still bulky enough to fit in with that late 80s anime aesthetic. You know, I was really nervous about the colors on this kit. See, in my mind the Alex has a very pure white base color, and a really saturated dark blue with tons of little details and vents peppered throughout. Having this kit in front of me, I can safely say this kit follows that mindset flawlessly. The white is super bright, but has a nice dull finish to it, so it doesn't look too cheap. Meanwhile, the blue has the saturation cranked up to 11. It just pops, and the contrast with the white is just perfect. The yellow also has a bit of orange mixed in, which I'm always a big fan of. And lastly, what little red is on this kit is also very bright, but not enough to where it distracts from the blue and the yellow. All in all, this is really just perfect colors. You are going to want to break out that black Gundam marker for the vents though. It really helps them pop. Without black paint inside each one of these, he's going to look a little bit toyish, so definitely get a black Gundam marker if you haven't already. You're going to need it on this kit. Moving on to the decals, unlike most Master Grades, you don't get the standard 2 sheets here. Instead, you only get a single sheet of peel and stick decals, containing both caution signs and those anime accurate details. It's probably for the best, considering dry transfers might scrape off when you apply the extra armor on top of them. Like the 1.0, you also get this awesome decal for the shield. It's just such a throwback font, I love it so much. Okay, straight up, the appearance here is perfect. I really don't think we'll ever get a better looking Gundam Alex in model kit form. This kit just nails the proportions, the colors, and the decals are all they need to be. For that, I have to give this appearance a perfect 5 out of 5. The 1.0 doesn't even compare to this. So this kit is a really simple build and has a great appearance, so let's see if you can hit some cool poses too. Starting at the feet, the toes can tilt up pretty well, great for some crouching poses. You don't get anything downwards though. The entire foot can detach from the ankle, allowing for some really dramatic action poses. The ankle is a ball joint on a rotating piece, allowing for some basic articulation. The ball joint is very high up though, so despite the overbearing ankle guard, it's pretty unrestricted. You can almost get a full 180-degree bend from the knee. It's pretty impressive, especially considering the size of these thrusters. It's all thanks to this back piece moving inwards when you bend the knee. Even though it's a pretty cool idea and really helps with the articulation, it can be really finicky. If you're not careful, you can accidentally push it off its hinge and have it fall inside the leg. From there, it's a nightmare trying to get it back in place, usually meaning you have to take the entire leg apart just to fix it. Also, I guess I'll say this now, this kit uses that newer, softer plastic rather than that old school ABS I love so much. While this is great for nub removal, if you're not careful, this plastic will snap on you. While taking off the front leg piece to show off the inner frame, it just split on me, and I had to glue it back together. I've legitimately never had this happen before, especially on an armor piece. This kit is just so nerve-wracking to pose, and once you get this armor on, you're never going to want to take it off. Getting back on track here, the hips utilize those modern style swivel mounts, so you get all the kicks, splits, and spins you could ask for. Moving on to the skirts, they are pretty basic. The back skirt is even a single moving piece. I will say this front section has a tendency to slide off though. I'd recommend gluing it down, but then you couldn't attach the full armor piece, so instead, you might just want to thicken up the groove with some glue. The chest is connected to the waist via a peg, so you would get some pretty great spins if it wasn't for how wide the chest is. It kind of bumps up against these side skirts. The chest itself is a series of fantastic hinges, allowing for some amazing tilts. Onto the shoulders, you get a solid 45-degree pop out. However, it will expose some of the frame underneath that scrunched up plastic. Other than that, you get the usual spin and lateral movement. Working our way down the arm, you get the usual 360-degree spin. It isn't the strongest connection though, and the added pressure from the scrunched up plastic can make it disconnect if you're not careful. Part of me wants to trim this plastic down, but I'm just so nervous I'll take too much off, you know? The elbows are a bit strange on this kit. While you do get a decent 135-degree bend, you can also spin the forearm independently. This really helps in getting good Gatling gun poses. The hands are a ball joint connected to a hinge, leading to all-around great movement. Like most modern master grades, this kit uses interchangeable fingers. While this guarantees he'll be able to hold up his weapons, I'm always annoyed when I have to break out a Ziploc bag of fingers every time I want to change the pose. Lastly, the head is on a double ball joint, so you get all the tilts and spins you'd expect. And that about sums up the articulation. It's pretty amazing on paper, but unfortunately there are a lot of joints that can be very finicky. Still, if you put some work into it, you can get this kit into just about any pose you could think of. We'll have to give this articulation a near perfect 4.5 out of 5. Maybe if this kit used that classic ABS plastic, it could have gotten a perfect score. Lastly, let's take a look over these gimmicks. First up, you get his rifle. While it's entirely this light gray color, it does have some basic part separation, so you could probably paint it to be more interesting. Unlike the 1.0, thanks to the interchangeable fingers, this Alex can hold up the rifle no problem. Next are his token beam sabers. Again, thanks to the dedicated fingers, there's no issues holding them up. Both handles store in the backpack, and stay in place much better than the version 1.0. Third, you get my favorite weapon of the Alex, this beautiful shield. I love this surfboard design. It's a great mix between the 1-year war era and Zeta era suits. Also, I can't say this enough, I really do love this font. Since this shield didn't appear in the anime, Bandai decided to take a few liberties with it. This shield can now open up to allow the Alex to shoot his Gatling guns through it. It's a really cool gimmick, even though I'm probably never gonna pose him like this. Lastly, you get a standard bazooka. It actually reuses parts from the RX-78-2 version 2.0. Once again, there are no issues holding this bazooka up, and the movable handle really helps. However, I usually prefer to have this stored on the back of the waist instead. Also, a side effect of reusing that runner, you actually get an almost complete RX-78 beam rifle. It is missing its clear scope, but still, how weird is that? All these weapons are cool, but really I'm here for his iconic Gatling guns found in each arm. Thanks to the extra spin at the elbow, he can point these Gatling guns pretty much anywhere he wants. Both the top and bottom fold open to reveal the guns, however there's no real locking mechanism here. This means even when they're closed, there's still going to be a bit of a gap here. Now let's finally talk about that full armor set. Well, it's usually called the Chobam armor, but full armor is way easier to pronounce, and technically the model number does have an FA in it, so that's what I'm going with. Anyway, unlike the 1.0, this armor actually has its own inner frame. It's a really cool idea, as the 1.0's full armor had a tendency to break, so the added support of this inner frame should help prevent that. I really like how this inner frame shows off the Alex underneath too. In all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of the full armor. This Alex is such a great design, so to hide it under monotone gray is just crazy to me. Regardless, this inner frame is a great compromise, showing the Alex's design, but still bulking it up. It's also not too hard to attach. While getting the chest section on can be a little bit rough, the rest is pretty simple, where you just snap the piece around the limbs and you're done. No polycaps required. The outer full armor is pretty solid here. You just snap each piece on top of the inner frame and he's ready to fight the camphor. It looks exactly how you would expect, with some nice details to break up this gray. You can also open up the hatches on the legs and shoulders to reveal a few vents, which is always a nice touch. This armor does hamper movement a little bit though. It's nothing crazy, but definitely noticeable. The large back skirt armor specifically really limits the leg movement. It usually has him leaning forwards in most poses. I've actually had him lose balance quite a few times too. The knee bend is also more limited because the armor covers up that moving piece on the back, leaving you with maybe a 135-degree bend. Really don't expect that many cool poses with this full armor. Thankfully, you still get access to the Gatling guns though. This is such a cool idea, and lets you do at least 1 or 2 poses with this armor on. Bandai also threw in this unique head armor based on the design of an old SD kit. It's totally unnecessary, but still an interesting addition. You also get an extra V-fin for the head. It's actually from the 3rd episode of the anime, when the camphor tags it with its chain mine. And lastly, you get 2 additional figures from the anime. One of Al running towards the final fight, and of course, Bernie as he's seen in that last videotape. If you haven't seen War in the Pocket, definitely get on that, it's such a great series. Anyway, this Master Grade comes with everything you could ask for from a Gundam Alex, plus tons of extra non-canon additions. On top of that, everything functions pretty well too. I'll give these gimmicks a perfect 5 out of 5. Honestly, I wish I could give this a 6, it's just so amazing. Alright, time to wrap this up for an average score. The build was a 4 out of 5. It's a really basic build, but there's enough frills here to bump it up. The appearance was a perfect 5 out of 5. It's about as anime accurate as you can get. The articulation was a 4.5 out of 5. While he can hit pretty much any pose you could think of, some of the joints can be a little finicky. And lastly, the gimmicks received a perfect 5 out of 5. It's everything this kit needs and more. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this Master Grade Gundam Alex version 2.0 receives a 4.6 out of 5. In terms of an unrounded percentage, it receives a 92.5%. So to answer that opening question, does this live up to the hype? Well, the appearance is flawless, he can hit tons of cool poses, and he has all the gimmicks you could think of, plus more. This really is an amazing kit. The only letdown in my mind is how basic this build was. But then I think back to the 1.0 and how frustrating it was just getting those stupid shoulder vents to look good. And amazingly, I stopped caring about how boring this build was. In my mind, this kit essentially erases the 1.0. There is no reason to get that kit when this beautiful 2.0 exists, even with its substantial price increase. So yeah, I'd say this kit does live up to the hype. Alright, feel free to ask any questions you have about this kit below, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram for work in progress builds, updates, the whole thing. Honestly, I've been posting there way more frequently than YouTube, so definitely give that a follow if you like these videos. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.